Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshulamitan Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Pravajantam Anupeta Apeta Krityam Rapayano Virakatara Ajuhava Putreti Tan Mayataya Tadavo Benedus Tam Sarvabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshay Kiptas Chakamadi Tarangamadye Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapanda Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Tave Vasmi Najivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, we begin, as always, by offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanitya Bhavishta Om Vishnu Padasta Tarsat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada and Sri Guru Pada Padmanitya Bhavishta Om Vishnu Padasta Tarsat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, unto our exalted Rupa Nuga Guru Varga and all the assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis. Okay, now yesterday and the day before, we had begun reading Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela about Lord Nityananda Prabhu. And the first day we read Srila Prabhupada's introduction to chapter 5, which is an overview of the whole chapter. Yesterday we read the first few verses, but it didn't record. So I'm going to do a quick review of that and then proceed. So first of all, in the very first chapter of Adi Leela, there are verses describing Mahaprabhu, 7 verses, Nityananda Prabhu, 5 verses, Advaitacharya, 2 verses. That chapter goes on to describe the principle of the spiritual masters. Then Mahaprabhu is described more in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th chapters. And now this 5th chapter is about Lord Nityananda. But there are 5 verses that this 5th chapter goes into detailed explanation about. So I'm going to read those 5 verses, which are from the very beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita. It begins with verse 7. The first verses are about Mahaprabhu, and then with this verse, we hear about Lord Nityananda. So, Sankarshana Karanato Yashai Garbhoda Shai Chaprayobda Shai Sheshastayas Yanksha Kalasa Nitya Nandakya Rama Sharanam Mamastu. May Sri Nityananda Ram be the object of my constant remembrance. Sankarshan, Sheshanag, and the Vishnus who lie on the Karna ocean, Garbha ocean, and ocean of milk are his plenary portions, and the portions of his plenary portions. And we heard that yesterday with Srila Prabhupada's expanded explanation. Then, Mayatite Vyapi Vaikuntha Loke Purnaisvarye Sri Chatavyuha Madhye Rupam Yasyo Bhati Sankarshanakyam Tam Sri Nityananda Ramam Prapadye. I surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, who is known as Sankarshan in the midst of the Chatuvyuha, That's the quadruple expansion. There's consisting of Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. He possesses full opulence and resides in Vaikuntha Loka, far beyond the material creation. And we heard that explanation. And then the next verse was, Maya Bharta Janda Sankarshayanga Shaite Sakshat Karunaram Bodhi Madhye Yashai Kanksha Sri Pumanadi Devas Tam Sri Nityananda Ramam Prapadye. I offer my full obeisance unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose partial representation called Karnadakshay Vishnu, lying on the Karna ocean, is the original Purush, the master of the illusory energy and the shelter of all the universes. Yasyang Shanksha Shilagarbado Dashai Yannabhya Bhajam Lokasangata Nalam Lokashashtu Sutikadama Datus Tam Sri Nityananda Ramam Prapadye. I offer my full obeisance unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, a partial part of whom is Garbhodakshay Vishnu. From the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu sprouts the lotus, that is the birthplace of Brahma, the engineer of the universe. The stem of that lotus is the resting place of the multitude of planets. And Yasyang Shang Shanksha Paramatma Kilanam Poshta Vishnu Bhatti Durgabdi Shai Shoni Bharta Yat Kalaso Pyanantas Tam Sri Nityanandam Ramam Prapadye. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose secondary part is the Vishnu lying in the ocean of milk. That Kshirodakshay Vishnu is the supersoul of all living entities and the maintainer of all the universes. Sheshanag is his further subpart. So those are those 5 verses. So, this chapter 5, the first verse was, let me offer my obeisance to Lord Sri Nityananda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose opulence is wonderful and unlimited. By his will, even a fool can understand his identity. So, again, from the very beginning, describing Lord Nityananda, he's describing that you can't pursue or approach this understanding independently. You have to have the mercy of Lord Sri Nityananda. But Lord Nityananda is not here directly before us. I mean, he's all-pervading. We understand that in his various manifestations. But he is in Apricot Leela. But who is Sri Nityananda? He is Akhanda Guru Tattva, Adi Guru, and he appears before us in the form of our Guru, our Gurudev. And through our Gurudev, we can understand the opulences, the mercy, the wonder of Sri Nityananda. Then the next verse was another Mangalacharana. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Acharya. And all glories to all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I have described the glories of Sri Krishna Chaitanya in 6 verses. Now, in 5 verses, I shall describe the glory of Lord Nityananda. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the fountainhead of all incarnations. Lord Balaram is his second body. These two are one and the same identity. They differ only in form. Lord Balaram is the first bodily expansion of Krishna, and he assists in Lord Krishna's transcendental pastimes. And so we were discussing how everything that exists for the purpose of experiencing pure, unlimited, transcendental pastimes of love. Right? In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, those verses describing Mahaprabhu, it says, Radha and Krishna are one. but they have separated themselves eternally for the purpose of pastimes, right? Loving pastimes. So the absolute truth, we can't really grasp the absolute truth in the conditioned state. Actually, even Krishna himself can't understand his own glory fully, right? Even Lord Baladev in his expansion Shesh with thousands of mouths and unlimited time can't describe fully the nature of the absolute truth, the sweetness of the absolute truth, the nature of these pastimes. But as Mahaprabhu told Rupa Goswami, the ocean of Ras, the ocean of transcendental love, is unlimited. It's an unlimited ocean, but I'm just going to give you a drop. And by understanding that drop, you can taste and enter into that glorious experience. So, that original Lord Krishna appeared in Navadvip as Lord Chaitanya, and Balaram appeared with him as Lord Nityananda. Now this is the verse we did yesterday. May Sri Nityananda Ram be the object of my constant remembrance. Sankarshan, Sheshanag, and the Vishnus, who lie on the Karna ocean, Garbha ocean, and the ocean of milk, are his plenary portions and the portions of his plenary portions. So we heard that just as, well, first of all, we have to understand that Lord Chaitanya and Sri Krishna are one and the same personality. But they have these apparently two forms in order to experience varieties of Leela. And as Lord Krishna, he's experiencing the unlimited love, receiving the unlimited love of his devotees in Vrindavan. He's the object of their love, the Vishaya Tattva. And Radhika and all the devotees in Vrindavan are the Ashraya Tattva, the reservoir, the abodes of that love. They have that love and they express it for him. And Vrindavan is all about the devotees completely surrendered, completely absorbed only in the desire to make Krishna happy. And Krishna, overwhelmed by that sentiment, becomes controlled by their love and reciprocates to the fullest extent that is possible to those devotees, and giving them extraordinary pleasure and joy as well. In this material world, love is self-centered. That everybody in this material world, we all have ahankara. And ahankara, which we translate as false ego, it means what? Aham means me, and kara, comes from this word. It means Purusha, or the controller, or the doer. And so each of us are bewildered, thinking that we are the doer, we're the controller, and that we are the object that we're meant to be the object of service from others. So our love is always dependent on reciprocation, that in the sense that we are always looking for our own happiness. Even in our philanthropic or so-called selfless actions in this world, it's also meant to give us pleasure. The idea, sometimes we say, well, people, they will sacrifice their own lives to protect their country, to protect their loved ones. Yes, that's true, but even that, there's self-interest. It may be something as obvious as, well, they'll put my name on a monument, or they'll give me a medal, or they'll remember me as someone who was their protector or their guardian, or because we identify not only with our own body, but our extended family, friends, etc., to protect them is also part of protecting ourselves. There's no absolute selflessness in this world, and no absolute love. But in the spiritual world, and we hear this when Ramananda Roy is describing the selflessness of the devotees culminating and peaking with the gopis, they are so selfless, they don't want even any pleasure for themselves. And if they do experience pleasure, sometimes it may interfere with their service. They become distressed and upset. There's a story in where Daruka, Krishna's charioteer, even in Dwarka these sentiments are there, where he's fanning Krishna and he becomes overwhelmed with ecstasy to such an extent he becomes stunned and he can't fan. And when he comes out of that state, he becomes distressed. Oh, what have I done? I neglected my service, right? The gopis, when their eyes are so overwhelmed with tears of love, they become upset because then they can't see and serve Krishna. So, as Lord Chaitanya, he is Krishna coming to experience the mood of his devotees, because he's seeing all these devotees, their love is so extraordinary, their joy is so great, it's even greater than my own, it appears. I am Raso Vaisaha, I am the very embodiment of Ras, and I take the greatest pleasure in the service of all devotees, but yet there's a pleasure that's beyond me, outside of my own experience. So the only way I can experience that is if I become a devotee as well. So, Srimati Radhika blesses and fulfills that desire and, in a sense, merges with him. They become one, and he becomes completely absorbed in her moods and her mood of devotion, right? So that's Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Baladev expands himself as Lord Nityananda. In Vrindavan, Balaram is the assistant to Krishna in every way, helping to fulfill his pastimes. And as Lord Nityananda, he assists Lord Chaitanya in fulfilling his pastimes in the mood of a devotee, right? But here's that same personality from whom Sankarshan, the Chaturvyuha, Sheshanag, and all of these expansions come from, right? So, Lord Balaram is the original Sankarshan. He assumes 5 other forms to serve Lord Krishna. He himself helps in the pastimes of Lord Krishna, and he does the work of creation in the 4 other forms. He executes the orders of Lord Krishna in the work of creation, and in the form of Lord Shesh, he serves Krishna in various ways. So we heard this yesterday. I'm recapping for the benefit of this YouTube. In all the forms, he tastes the transcendental bliss of serving Krishna. That same Balaram is Lord Nityananda, the companion of Lord Gaurasundar. So that point, he tastes the transcendental bliss of serving Krishna. Lord Nityananda is Baladev, and Baladev is non-different from Krishna in almost every way. I mean, their complexion is different, but their forms are identical, except that Baladev has that mood that I am the servant of Krishna. Right? And because all living entities are created by Lord Balaram, they also have that mood. And because he has that mood, he is the origin of that mood. And thus, he is the guru of all, the teacher of service. So when we are studying and honoring this, we're trying to get the mercy of Lord Balaram, Lord Nityananda, to be able to be accepted into that realm of service. This is what we're leading up to when we celebrate Lord Balaram on his appearance day. We're celebrating him in so many ways as Krishna's friend, his brother, his protector, his servant, right? And praying for his mercy, because without the mercy of Lord Nityananda, you cannot enter into the service of Gaurasundar. Oh, and I told some story yesterday. I forgot to complete the point. Yesterday we were telling the story about when Lord Balaram, or Lord Nityananda, first came to Navadvip, to Antardvip, Mayapur, to meet, finally, his brother. They had not met yet in their Leela. Mahaprabhu now was almost 24. It's almost time for him to become sannyas. But now he had inaugurated his pastimes of delivering the holy name, the Yuga Dharma. So Lord Nityananda came, and he was at the house of Nandanacharya, but no one could find him. Lord Chaitanya had instructed his disciples, I had a dream, this remarkable personality has come, go find him. And Haridas and Srivas Pandit went everywhere, all over, looking for him, door to door, couldn't find him. And then Lord Chaitanya said, come with me, I'll show you where he is. And they walked down the road all the way from his place, Yog Pit, all the way down to the end, which we know now as the Ghat, where the boats are, Ishodhyan. And they went to the house of Nandanacharya, opened the door, and there was Lord Nityananda. And we described yesterday something of their meeting. But the point that I forgot to mention was that without Lord Nityananda, we can't approach Mahaprabhu. But without the mercy of Mahaprabhu, we won't be able to have a guru. That Krishna inspires in the heart the meeting between Sri Guru and the aspiring disciple. Right? That Srila Gurudev describes in his book, The Pinnacle of Devotion. He gives lectures on Mahaprabhu. And he says, for those aspiring for a guru, you have to pray in your heart over and over to Krishna and our previous acharyas, please send me a guru like you. And responding to that sincere prayer, he will arrange the meeting. And he gives the example. Who in America called for Srila Prabhupada? Who even knew that he existed? Lord Nityananda sent him. Krishna, Mahaprabhu sent him. And before Srila Prabhupada had left, he was meditating for 40 years on fulfilling this order of his guru to preach this message in the West. And so many obstacles were there. And the last obstacle was getting the boat ticket to come. And he was in Vrindavan, he was printing the Bhagavatams, everything was ready, but he had no ticket. And then one night at the Radha Damodar temple where he was living, he had a vision, he had a darshan of his own Guru Maharaj, who appeared in the courtyard, calling out his name. He went and he saw him, and he was overwhelmed. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada told him, why are you still here? Why are you here? Why have you not now gone to the West? And he said, oh, Guru Maharaj, I've been trying, I can't get the ticket. And he said, they're waiting for you. They're waiting. So many are waiting, you have to go. So that means that all these souls that Srila Prabhupada ultimately met and inspired, in previous lifetimes, they had done bhakti, so many of them. And even though they were unaware in this lifetime of that was temporarily forgotten, in their heart, they'd been calling, waiting, oh. And then Lord Nityananda sent Srila Prabhupada. So it's by the grace of the Lord, Mahaprabhu, that we find Nityananda. Nityananda represents all Guru, and Lord Nityananda empowered Srila Prabhupada and all of our acharyas to in the execution of their very special mission. So, he said, in all the forms he tastes the transcendental bliss of serving Krishna. That same Lord Balaram is Lord Nityananda, the companion of Lord Gaurasunda. I have explained the 7th verse in 4 subsequent verses. By these verses, all the world can know the truth about Lord Nityananda. So, that overview verse, which we read yesterday, now we heard the 4 verses that come after that go in more detail about it. And the first one is this one. Maya tite vyapi vaikunta loke purnaishvarye shri chaturvyuha madhye rupam yaso bhakti sankarsanakyam tam Sri Nityananda ramam papadye. I surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, who is known as Sankarshan in the midst of the Chaturvyuha, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. He possesses full opulences and resides in Vaikuntha Loka, far beyond the material creation. And that verse was originally compiled by Sri Damodar Goswami, passed on to Raghunath Das, who passed it on to Krishnadas Kaviraj. Now, he's going to elaborate on it. Prakritira para parav yommanamedam Krishna vigraharyache vibhutiyadi gunavan. Beyond the material nature lies the realm known as Paravyom, the spiritual sky. Like Lord Krishna himself, it possesses all transcendental attributes, such as the 6 opulences. Now, this is going to be a fairly involved purport, so buckle up, try to pay attention. It's hard, but the more you hear it, the more it'll sink in. I just found this little notebook that I had from 1999. And it was when I went to India. It was the second time I went to Parikram, and I was only able to go for the last 10 days, and it was in Govardhan. And I wrote all these notes, Gurudev's lectures at the different places by different devotees, all like that. And this morning I was reading many of the notes, and I was looking at these points that were being made, and I realized that, oh, okay, this, whatever it was, all these details, but I didn't really join full time and join the Mat and come to India until 2003, right? I stayed one winter, 2002, 2003, and then came back to America, but then finished up everything and then went back. And the points that were being made in those notes were things that I wrote down, I heard, but I didn't really remember and grasp. It was over many years that those points sunk in, and that I began to understand them. Because when I read them, I said, oh yeah, I know that. But then it occurred to me, even though I attended the lectures and I wrote the notes, I remembered year after year coming to understand these different points. I heard them, but it kind of went in one ear, out the other. But nevertheless, something was planted in the heart, right? Something was planted in the heart, and that matured and ripened over time. So reading these things, it may appear like, oh, I'm going to leave class today. I won't remember any of this. This is all technical. I've never heard this before, But it will enter the heart like a seed. And if you continue to do your bhajan and your service in the right mood, with humility, then these conceptions will grow. So, what's Srila Prabhupada's purport? According to the Sankhya philosophy, the material cosmos is composed of 24 elements. There are 5 gross elements, 5 gross material elements, 3 subtle material elements, the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the 5 active senses, the 5 objects of sense pleasure, and the Mahatattva, the total material energy. This is also described in the Bhagavatam, when it's describing how the material nature manifests itself step by step. Right? We heard the other day about Shambhu, about Lord Shiva, that special manifestation from Mahavishnu, who enters into the material energy, which is dormant and unmanifest, and he becomes the activating principle, right? Stimulates his Shakti, his counterpart, Durga, and that Pradhan, that dormant Pradhan, manifests the Mahatattva, because he is the manifestation of time. And he also carries all the living entities with him that are meant to be here, and also carries the desire to create. The desire to create comes from Mahavishnu, and then that is carried into the material nature by Lord Shiva. So first there's the Mahatattva, and so what are these 24 elements? The 5 gross material elements, what are those? right? You got earth, water, right? Fire, air, and sky or ether. And then you've got 3 subtle material elements, which are mind, intelligence, and false ego. 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, right? Eyes, ears, nose, touch, taste, how we interact and with the material nature. 5 active senses. That means the working senses, right? Like legs, arms, 2 arms, 2 legs, genitals, right? Like that. Then the 5 objects of sense pleasure, right? Oh, what does the nose do? It smells. What does it smell? Right? The fragrance that's coming from earth. And what does it taste? It tastes what's coming from water, right? Taste. What is it? What is in air? Touch. What is in fire? Form. What is in ether? Sound. So all these things evolve, right? And so the Sankhya philosophers, they can see that, but they don't see what's beyond it. They don't see what causes it. So they, like material scientists, they can only go so far back. And they consider that the material nature is its own cause, right? Because they can analyze cause and effect very expertly. But the original cause beyond all that, the spirit, they can't detect. Empiric philosophers, unable to go beyond these elements, speculate that anything beyond them must be avyakta or inexplicable. And in a sense, it is inexplicable to material intelligence and material perception. But the world beyond the 24 elements is not inexplicable, for it is explained in the Bhagavad Gita as the eternal Sanatana nature. Beyond, and this is all explained by Krishna, he begins, this is the basis of the 2nd chapter, right, of Bhagavad Gita. This is how it starts out. When Arjuna's bewildered, Krishna has to start with, hey, know for certain that all those you're concerned about, they're not this material body, they're spirit soul. And that they don't die. They were never created, they never die, they're eternal. So don't lament. And then he explains about, in a simple way about the material nature and the spiritual nature. Beyond the manifested and unmanifested existence of material nature, vyakta, avyakta, is the Sanatana nature, which is called the Paravyom, or the spiritual sky. Since that nature is spiritual in quality, there are no qualitative differences there. Everything there is spiritual. Everything is good. And everything possesses the spiritual form of Sri Krishna himself. That spiritual sky is the manifested internal potency of Sri Krishna. It is distinct from the material sky manifested by his external potency. Right? So he's saying there is a reality. This reality is an imperfect, vitiated, degraded reflection of that pure spiritual existence. The Greeks, who had some connection with India, their philosophers had this idea, as above, so below. They had the conception that this reality is a reflection of a higher reality. You ever hear of what is it? Was it Plato's cave or Socrates' cave? It was a philosophical conception of these people living in a cave in darkness, and all they understood of reality, there was a fire behind them, and there were shadows reflected on the wall, from that fire and from them. And their whole existence was observing these shadows. And they were told by someone who came into the cave, actually there's a whole world outside. And you're seeing a very small shadow reflection of that world. But none of them could understand. What are you talking about? I'll show you if you want. Come with me. Right? That's us. And when you present that with people, because this world is so complete, so full with so many amazing things, very difficult to think that there could be something more and greater than this. And because we've not awakened a desire to serve the Lord, we're kept in this illusion. The Mahamaya prevents us from imagining beyond that. Until we become submissive, humble, and inquiring, right? Tasmad gurum papadyeta jigyasu shreya uttamam, until you become desirous of understanding, curious about the ultimate something more, you're going to have to be content to live in this environment, right? So, the all-pervading Brahman, composed of the impersonal glowing rays of Sri Krishna, exists in the spiritual world with the Vaikuntha planets. We can get some idea of that spiritual sky by a comparison to the material sky. For the rays of the sun in the material sky can be compared to the Brahmajyoti, the glowing rays of the personality of Godhead. In the Brahmajyoti, there are unlimited Vaikuntha planets, which are spiritual and therefore self-luminous, with a glow many times greater than that of the sun. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, his innumerable plenary portions, and the portions of his plenary portions dominate each Vaikuntha planet. In other words, each Vaikuntha planet has its own Lord or master, that particular form of the Lord. And each planet, each form of the Lord, we know some of these forms because they come as avatars in our world. And they have a counterpart in the spiritual world. This is described in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Gopakumar was able to see that these different forms, they have their own Vaikuntha planet, and the devotees who worship them also take similar forms to serve them in that way. And that's very hard for us to understand because, as he's saying, we have material examples, but the material examples are so limited that it's hard for us. Like, for instance, Matsya, the fish incarnation, right? When we think of fish, what do we think? We think of some catfish, some stupid, gross thing like that, or, fish live in the ocean, they eat stuff on the bottom. Although there are some fish that are very beautiful. There are some coral reefs where the fish are extraordinary with colors and beauty. There are some aquarium fish which are very beautiful. So imagine a fish so extraordinary, so beautiful, but also Satchidananda, but living in an environment which is also, if you can think that some coral reef is beautiful and astonishing, or some aquarium, something unlimitedly beyond that. And that fish is swimming, that divine form, surrounded by devotees. It's like Krishna surrounded by the dancing gopis, or surrounded by his cowherd boyfriends, or surrounded by his mother and her friends, or surrounded by the forest trees in Vrindavan, all which make him more and more beautiful. Right? And the pastimes that they perform also lend to the beauty, excitement, and experience of ecstasy. So in that form also, whether it's or Varaha or any other form, the devotees are there and they have some kinds of divine leela, right? Which are completely beyond our conception. So that personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, his innumerable plenary portions, and the portions of his plenary portions dominate each Vaikuntha planet. In the highest region of the spiritual sky is the planet called Krishnaloka, which has 3 divisions, namely Dwarka, Mathura, and Goloka or Gokul. Right? So Dwarka is where Krishna manifests himself as the king, right, with all his wives. He's Krishna. There's some sweetness there because his beauty is extraordinary beyond any of the other incarnations, even Lord Ram, and it's extraordinary. But even more extraordinary is Mathura, where Krishna is there, because of its proximity to Braj. And then Braj is even more. The problem with Mathura and Dwarka is that the gopis aren't there. The Vrindavan forest is not there. Krishna's not there in his sweetest form as Gopinath. He's not there as Shama Sundar. He doesn't have his flute. They don't perform pastimes in the forest. It all becomes mixed with more Aishvarya. Now he's powerful. Now he's like a prince like a king. And there's no parakya. Everything is svakya. So, to a gross materialist, this kingdom of God, Vaikuntha, is certainly a mystery. But to an ignorant man, everything is a mystery for want of sufficient knowledge. The kingdom of God is not a myth. Even the material planets which float over our heads in the millions and billions are still a mystery to the ignorant. Right, they're trying to figure out the universe, completely bewildered. Every 10 years they come up with a new theory, something more they thought that they didn't know before, and then they think, okay, now we got it. Now we understand it. We thought we understood something before, but then we got our Hubble telescope. And now we understood so many more things. Now we got it. Oh, but now we have the Webb telescope. And we're finding mysteries and explanations we never had before. So they never get there. And they're always revising their ideas, because it's all based on incomplete knowledge, imperfect senses, limited intelligence. To really understand something completely, you have to understand it not in an ascending way, step by step, from ignorance on up, but from the descending way, from the perfected understanding of knowledge handed down to you. Right? So, material scientists are attempting to penetrate this mystery, and a day may come when the people of this earth will be able to travel in outer space and see the variegatedness of these millions of planets with their own eyes. In every planet, there is as much material variegatedness as we find in our own planet. Right. In previous ages, there were personalities who could do this by their vimanas, their ships, and even in their self-same body, certain kinds of yogis, and their descriptions are there. And there's also a description that in some Kali Yugas, they replicate but in a gross way, the perfections of the yogis, and they do have spaceships, and they do go out, and they even fight and conquer, right? So it's possible. Whether they do it in this Kali Yuga or not, who knows? But those technologies do exist. They're hidden, but everybody knows. There's been spaceships flying around, we call them UFOs. There have been entities that have visited, that are living with us. They're just now beginning to hint that this is a reality, and it's been known as a reality for some time. The planet Earth is but an insignificant spot in the cosmic structure. Yet, foolish men, puffed up by a false sense of scientific advancement, have concentrated their energy in the pursuit of so-called economic development on this planet, not knowing of the variegated economic facilities available on other planets. According to modern astronomy, the gravity of the moon is different from that of Earth. Therefore, one who goes to the moon will be able to pick up large weights and jump vast distances. In the Ramayana, Hanuman is described as being able to lift huge weights as heavy as hills and jump over the ocean. Modern astronomy has confirmed that this is indeed possible. So in other words, he's describing that on different planets, people have different kinds of forms and bodies and different kinds of abilities, right? And we get a hint of that if we go to that moon place, we may manifest something which we can't manifest here. Right? The disease of the modern civilized man is his disbelief of everything in the revealed scriptures. That's a disease. And even the histories of the world that are contained in scriptures. The Vedas have fairly detailed descriptions of past civilizations and past events. Other scriptures have them in fragmentary ways, and because a lot of it has been forgotten, and because it was first revealed to the world through mundane scholars, they now consider them mythology. And because they've been changed over time as well, they may not be completely accurate descriptions of past events. But modern archaeology is now coming to understand that actually there was civilizations and technologies way beyond what we thought existed. They're resistant to the idea of that this is a reality, but more and more these artifacts are coming to light. The existence of these things which can't be explained by their narrative, by their paradigm, is becoming increasingly obvious. And as the old school dies out, then newer scientists and students and all will come up and be more open to these different ideas. Science has these cycles that are about 50 or 60 years. And it's because what happens is they'll study something, they'll come up with an idea, that'll become the fixed conception, and the people that came up with that will hold on to that for their lifetime, and maybe the generation that come after them will be trained in that, and it'll be very difficult for them to adjust to something more. That's, just like people have attachment to their own views of religion, modern science is like a religion, It isn't necessarily based on full and complete evidence, but it's based on a kind of faith. And faith is that which is the way by which people understand and interpret things, right? I have my faith, like in the study of the history of the earth. People that believe the idea that the earth, the biblical idea, this is not actually the biblical idea, but it's a modern interpretation of the biblical idea. They say that the earth was created maybe 6,000 years ago. And so all the geologic evidence, all the dinosaurs, all the indications of floods and disasters, they try and cram it into that 6,000-year window, right? And everything they see, they say, oh, this is proof, this is proof. Someone else who doesn't have that paradigm, they'll say, wait a minute, this isn't proof, this is proof of something else. When the evolutionists try to discuss and understand how evolution works, they'll look at the geological evidence and they'll say, oh, this is proof. With limited understanding of biology, they'll say, oh, this is proof. Limited understanding of chemistry, all from these different fields, they say, this is proof. Right? Your paradigm, your particular faith, is called cognitive bias. Whatever you see, you'll see through that lens, right? And so if you have a bias in a particular way, everything that you see will be interpreted to support that. And that which doesn't support it, that doesn't exist, or that's, you've misunderstood it. So that's their disease, the disbelief of everything in revealed Scripture. Faithless non-believers cannot make progress in spiritual realization, for they cannot understand the spiritual potency. The small fruit of a banyan contains hundreds of seeds, and in each seed is the potency to produce another banyan tree with the potency to produce millions more of such fruits. This is the law of nature. It's visible before us, although how it works is beyond our understanding. This is but an insignificant example of the potency of Godhead. And there are many similar phenomena that no scientist can explain. Right, so the scientists, they get checked. When they talk about the origin of life being material, matter became organized itself, how or why, they can't explain. Real organic and synthetic chemists will say, actually, that description of matter coming to organize itself, it completely defies the laws of chemistry as we know them. It can't be, right? And then biologists saying, oh, the cell formed, but how did the cell form? It forms on the basis of code, information contained in DNA. DNA strands, one strand of DNA contains more information than all the libraries of the world. And where did that come from? That information doesn't organize itself out of disinformation. That defies the current laws of material nature. So their own explanations are inconsistent with their understanding of material nature. But they can't go to first causes. And ultimately, if you say, oh, it's coming from spiritual, they say, well, what caused that? And they say, oh, you can't say, oh, therefore your explanation is bogus. But they come up against the same wall trying to understand the origin of the material energy. Of life in this world. But the fact is, life isn't a product of matter. Life is injected into matter. Life energizes matter. And where does life come from? Right? So, potency of Godhead. Everything, in fact, is inconceivable, for the truth is revealed only to the proper persons. Although there are varieties of personalities, from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, all of whom are living beings, their development of knowledge is different. Therefore, we have to gather knowledge from the right source. Indeed, in reality, we can get knowledge only from the Vedic sources. The four Vedas with their supplementary Puranas and Mahabharata, the Ramayana and their corollaries, which are known as Smritis, are all authorized sources of knowledge. If we are at all to gather knowledge, we must gather it from these sources without hesitation. Revealed knowledge may, in the beginning, be unbelievable because of our paradoxical desire to verify everything with our tiny brains. That's what we do, right? Yeah. So it seems paradoxical, right? We run up into contradictions. But the speculative means of attaining knowledge is always imperfect. The perfect knowledge propounded in the revealed scriptures is confirmed by the great acharyas, who have left ample commentaries upon them. None of these acharyas has disbelieved in the Shastra. One who disbelieves in the Shastra is an atheist, and we should not consult an atheist, however great he may be. A staunch believer in the Shastras, with all their diversities, is the right person from whom to gather real knowledge. Such knowledge may seem inconceivable in the beginning, but when put forward by the proper authority, its meaning is revealed. Then one no longer has doubts about it. Yeah. So I was just, staying for a few days with my sister, hubby, and relatives, and they put me up time to time. They're very nice people, but they have no knowledge of religion. But they're curious and they like to ask questions. But I find myself challenged to be able to explain to them even the most basic stuff when they ask questions, because you come up against this barrier until you come to the point where you become curious and a little humble and step outside of the existing paradigms of who are we, why are we here, what does it all mean. It's very difficult to conceive these ideas. Arjuna also could not come out of that lamentation and limitation until Shashasteham Sharimam Pam Papam Yam. I'm overcome by grief, I'm overcome by illusion. I don't want to talk to you as a friend anymore, as my charioteer, or whatever our relationship was. Now I'm a soul surrendered unto you. Now I accept you as guru. Please instruct me. We have to come to a position of humility and realization that, I don't have the answers. I need these answers from a higher source. And initially that curiosity, if it brings you to the Shastra, and you read them submissively, and you take up the mood of seva, then step by step it will all be revealed over time. Anyway, so we'll stop here, and we'll continue tomorrow. All right. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, extraordinary purports. All glories to Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. All glories to all the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Bol.